What's up? It's your girl Fluffy and I'm back with another video. So today's video is going to be a little different, but some of you may unsubscribe. I don't know, maybe. But if not, make sure you like, share, and subscribe. I may not have the comments turned on for this because today I am going to be giving you guys a piece of me, hence the title of this, A Piece of Me. So for the last almost 2 years I have been battling severe depression, and I know it may not seem like it because I do a very good job at being a good friend or making people laugh, things like that. So I tend to minimize my situation for the sake of other people, so they don't understand or they don't ask me what's wrong, or you know, and I try to be a little bit more humble about my situation. So part of it is me telling you guys what has been going on and why I often disappear for, you know, 2 weeks at a time or things like that. So without further ado, it has taken me quite some time to get the nerve to sit here in this chair and tell you guys my story. And yeah, so here we go. So you guys may have known that I was a group home supervisor for almost 7 years. Okay, so I worked at different agencies, and at those agencies I often became a supervisor, or I was hired to be a supervisor at those positions, working in a group home with at-risk youth from ages 12 to 18. I have worked with girls and boys before. However, the situation that I will be explaining to you guys that took place over almost the last almost 2 years happened at a boys group home. So back at the end of 2018, somewhere like around December 22nd, something of that nature, I got a phone call from my staff at about 4:30 in the morning that's telling me that one of the residents has beaten the other resident, his roommate, severely bad with a computer cord. So we're talking about a Google Chrome, not a Google Chrome, what do you call those? The Google laptops, you know, the computer cord, right? So I said, okay, well, I'll be in. And I wasn't sure of how extreme the situation was until I got to work. So when I got to work, I am asking the roommate who was severely beaten what happened, and at this point I could not ignore the marks that were on his hand and on his body, on his back, on his leg, on his calves, on his buttocks. They were everywhere. Okay, and this kid, the best analogy that I could give you to show you of how severely beaten, it's almost as if he was like a slave and he got caught leaving the plantation. And I'm not saying that to be funny, I'm saying that to give you the idea of how bad the welt marks were on his body. And I'm a mandated reporter. Every job that I've ever had, I've always been a mandated reporter. So because he had these marks, I could not ignore that. So I called my program director and I tell him, you know, hey, this is a situation that's going on over here at this facility, and you know, what do you want me to do? Because I cannot ignore it. So I'm gonna have to write this up, definitely. And my program director says, well, call the police. So in between the time of waiting for the police, I called the other resident, the one that actually beat the other kid, and I asked him and I said, you know, hey, what happened? You know, did he do something to you? Did he try something? You know, why would you beat him like you did? And this kid starts bawling, crying. And he's like, I don't know, Miss T, I don't know. I blanked out. You know, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. And I said, okay. You know, I understand that is, you know, where you're going with this. So LAPD comes to the facility. They look at the kid that was beaten and they ask the kid, do you want to press charges? The other kid is like super scared. He's like, no, I don't want to do it. I don't want to press charges. I don't want to make this worse. You know, this situation could be so much worse than what it already is. And the police, I tell them, you know, can you guys have the PET team, which is a psychiatric emergency team for LAPD, come out to assess the other kid, because he's saying he blanked out. You know, and anytime that you beat somebody and you blank out, there's something wrong. There's an underlying reason, and you're at that point your mental health should be checked. So they tell me that because the other kid is not willing to press charges, that they cannot call their PET team out, because their PET team only comes out if you know, they're going to proceed to go further with the situation as charging the other person. So I said, okay. So they said, call PMRT, which is a psychiatric medical response team for Los Angeles County. And I called them. I explained to them over the phone, you know, what has happened, and they say they're going to come out. As I'm talking to the lady on the phone, mind you, I'm on the phone. It's not a quick phone call. This is a process. So I'm on the phone with her for about 30-45 minutes, and she's like, well, can you please keep the other resident in the house, because we're gonna come, but we're actually probably going to take him, because if he's beating someone and he has no idea why, that's a problem. So I said, okay. So I did my best keeping the other kid there. He's getting riled up. He's trying to leave, trying to AWOL. You know, he's like yelling profusely, this, that, and the third. So I'm calling for extra staff to come in, because both kids are still in the house and I'm a female by myself. You know, I'm telling my program director, like, hey, I need help. You know, I need someone to come over here, because you can't just have me just here in this house alone, because if anything happens, I'm not going to be able to take either one of them down by myself. So staff comes a couple hours later, and we're trying to keep the other kid there. So I don't want to leave at my normal time. So mind you, this happened, I told you, I get to work at this old job. I would get to work at 8:30. PMRT doesn't show up till about 3:30 p.m. So around that time, PMRT is there. They're talking to me. I'm giving them his whole file. You know, any psychiatric medication that this kid is already on. I'm telling them about what meds he takes and stuff like that. And they can hear him yelling, just, you know, being wild and just belligerent, you know. And they call him in and they talk to him, and then he realizes that they're going to take him. So in the process of that, PMRT has called for LAPD to come back to the facility, because they don't believe that they will be able to take him willingly. Like, he's not going to go willingly. So they call PMRT. So as he's like yelling and walking like out the front door, LAPD walks up. The LAPD that actually walks up happens to be one of my friends that I went to school with. We got our master's degree together. So, you know, he's talking to me, and I'm explaining to him what's happening. And he's like, okay. So they, you know, put the kid in the back of their vehicle, their patrol car. So the ambulance comes and they take him. And this kid is staring at me like I have just ruined his whole life. Okay, and it is a look that, one, I will never forget. I will never forget how this kid was looking at me that day. And he mouths to me that I'm gonna get you back. Okay, all right, you know. So I go in back to work. Mind you, at this point it's going on like 5:30, 6 o'clock. I go in and I write up my report, go home, come back the next day, and we're still dealing with the remnants of what has happened the previous day. So I'm calling the hospital where the kid at, just to check on the kid, just to make sure that he's okay. and to talk to him and see if he understands why he's on a psychiatric hold. And I'm talking to him, and he's like, I want to come home. It's right before the holidays. And I said, well, you've got to tell them what happened. You've got to be able to explain to them what happened, and they have to be able to deem you and release you and whatnot. So the whole time, I'm like advocating for this kid because I know he has nowhere to go. I know he has no family that he can go and move with at the time. And I'm like, so we need to bring him back to this facility, but we need to move the other kid. So we move the other kid out of the facility so that way this other kid can return. Okay, so that was the plan. We were all on board with that. We were just like, because at this time, you got to understand, with this particular kid that went to the hospital, I had a very good working relationship with this kid. Very good working relationship. I was going up to his school every time the school called, being supportive, helping him with homework. He would actually listen to me. I would help this kid clean his room. I mean, very supportive relationship as far as a group home supervisor and a resident of the group home. We had a very solid relationship where he would come, he could talk to me about anything. He would talk to me about girl problems, he would talk to me about stuff with school, and it never went any further than that. So he comes back to the facility, and a few days after he comes back, one of the staff tells me, T, we got to get him out of here. And I said, why? He said, this kid is upset because when he was on a psychiatric hold, the roommate at the psychiatric hospital got into a fight with. So they hit him in the mouth where his tooth punctured his cheek and he had to get stitches. That was while he was on psychiatric hold. So when he came back, he blamed me for that. As if you would have never put me there, my face would not be messed up. So he felt, because he thought he was like the most handsome kid, he was just like, now my face is messed up from you. And he's like, that's your fault. Your fault my face is messed up. So, whenever he would say that to me, I just would not let it bother me, because I understood that, you can't let what the kids say, you can't take it personal all the time. And anyway, so the staff is explaining to me, because of that, this kid wants to get back at you. So he's like, you need to watch yourself, but we need to get this kid out of here because I'm afraid he's going to do something to you that's going to hurt you in the long run. This is the staff telling me this. So I call my program director right after that staff calls me and tells me that, and tell the staff. The staff tells me to document it. The program director tells me to document it. So I document it, I write it down in the logbook, I write it down in an email to his social worker at the time, and let them know, like, hey, this is what he's saying, yada yada yada. So then around January hits, we find out at school that he's can't attend the school that he's in anymore because he doesn't have enough credits. So he's attending a regular high school. It's a charter high school, but because he doesn't have enough credits in the 11th grade, they're like, he technically cannot no longer go to this school. He needs to go to a continuation school. So we find him a continuation school. He goes to the continuation school. He's there for like 2 weeks. So then we find out, we get a phone call from the dean that he like cursed the dean out. He got caught smoking weed, and then when they did a search of his backpack, they found 8 or 9 blue pills. The blue pills are his actual psychiatric medication. So he's not taking his medication. Instead, he's making it look like he is taking them, and he's not. In our field, we call that cheating meds. So he was cheating his meds. So he comes back to the facility, and I have to find another continuation school for him. In the city that we were in, it was very hard to find continuation schools in the second semester of school, because now most kids are like, oh, if I hurry up, I can go in and I can graduate. So I find another one for him. He goes to this continuation school. He's there literally like 2 days and gets kicked out again. Now, the problem with continuation schools is that they are like all friends. So they can call each other and ask like, hey, why is this kid not in your school? And they get the whole story. So we had a lot of the schools that were like, no, because of his behavior, we can't take him. We don't want that at our school. And it was just very hard to place him at that school. at any school. So he was out of school for like a month and a half, 2 months. So then he started blaming me because he was out of school, not realizing that his behavior, you know, his actions in the past, getting kicked out of 2 schools, is not the reason as to why he's not in school. So at this point, he's getting infuriated with me. And basically, this is when everything starts taking place. So as a result of him being angry, he started cursing me out more. And when I say about more, you know, I get when kids are angry about something, and you know, as a staff, you kind of get cursed out in the path. You know, you're kind of like in the way, so you get cursed out, and you think nothing of it, and everything goes back to normal. But he started intentionally cursing me out. So I remember one day, one of the staff had taken him to get a haircut, but the staff would drop them off, let them get their haircut, and then come back to the facility. And then when they were done, they just called and we would go and pick them up. So the staff was on his way, but the staff, before he decided to pick him up, wanted to go and pick up medication for another kid at the pharmacy. So the staff goes, picks up the medication. So the kid, he calls me on the phone, "Hey, where the staff at?" I said, "I don't know. I'm here at the facility." "Okay, well, where's he at? I've been waiting almost 15-20 minutes. Where's he at? I'm done. I'm ready to go." "Hey, look, I don't know where he's at. I'm not with him. You called the facility. I'm here. I can't explain to you where he's at." So he starts cussing me out. "You fat bitch, da 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 da. You should have sent him when I fucking called. Why the fuck is he not here? Yada yada yada." So mind you, I just hang up the phone. I'm not just gonna sit here and just let you verbally abuse me because the staff decided that he wanted to stop elsewhere and pick up, you know, medication or whatever the case may be. That's not me. That is the staff. I am the supervisor, but if he decides that he's gonna do an errand first, you're gonna wait. Like, what am I supposed to do? I wasn't even the one picking you up. So he comes in the facility, storms into my office, and he's like yelling, cursing at me even more for like 15-20 minutes. And so I just sat there and I just took it in, because at this point I'm tired of, like, I'm always at fault for something that I'm never actually at fault for. So I'm like, all right, cool. Now mind you, he was doing this at least 3-4 times a week. So I only work 5 days a week, so he was doing this 3-4 times a week. In the process of that, this kid's grandmother was supposed to find an apartment, because she had Section 8, was supposed to find an apartment with 2 bedrooms so he could move in with her. Instead of her finding a 2-bedroom apartment, she found a 1-bedroom. She found a 1-bedroom, which means he could not move, go back home, or spend the night. So now he's angry again. Okay? So he's angry again. So I'm like, wow, you know, that has nothing to do with me. So now he's even more angry that he only has day visits instead of overnights. So as time goes on, I start coming out of work, and I noticed that, like, the caps of my tires would be, you know when you put air in your car, the caps would be taken off. So I'm like, okay, that's weird, because I know that I go to like and get my tires fixed, and I know that they're perfectly fine. So why are these being taken off? All right, no big deal. So I just kind of, you know, leave it at that. Then I would come out and notice that there would be milk thrown over my car, like large amounts of milk thrown over my car. I would start coming out from work and seeing a bunch of trash thrown over my car. It would just be like straight vandalism. And each time I would call my program director, and they would give me you know, money to go get my car detailed and washed and stuff like that. And of course I would document it. So then you know, as that's going on, so mind you, this is going on for a few months. So finally we end up 7-daying him, because we realized that there's no school in the nearby region that will take him, that he has to move out of this district in order to go to school. So the social worker finally decides to come out, because all of a sudden he didn't have a social worker, and a social worker supervisor came out. So when she finally came out, we, you know, explained to her that we do have to 7-day him because he's not in school. And I said, we are definitely, you know, we have tried to work with him, but his behaviors are escalating. I explained to her, you know, what has happened. And she's like, well, he seems like a sweet kid. And I mean, this kid is like a master manipulator. Master manipulator. So the social worker supervisor assigns a social worker to come out and start working with him to find him a foster home, because then they realize that he's supposed to be in a foster home. So this social worker takes her like precious time on moving him out, because she's like, I have to find him a foster home. I have to find somewhere for him to go, X, Y, and Z. And so finally they found somewhere for him to go. So she comes and she picks him up or whatever, and he's like not speaking to me. At this point he's like livid, not speaking to me at all. So right before that, right before he leaves, a few weeks before that, I started getting text messages on my phone. So as I'm getting text messages on my phone, I'm like, you know, who is this? And the person was like, you're gonna get fired, I'm gonna ruin your reputation, X, Y, and Z. You know, you're never gonna be able to work again. So I show my supervisor, my program director, I show him, and he's like, yeah, that's definitely him. You know, we're able to tell by his lingo, the way that he's saying certain phrases, we're able to just tell that it's him. So we document it, and I just kind of move on. So at this point, I'm starting to have like panic attacks before work. You know, it's getting harder to go to work because it's like I'm constantly being cussed out by this kid. I'm not getting the support that I needed. You know, I would ask for extra staff to come in the mornings to work with me when this kid was present in the, you know, facility, because he was just doing the utmost. You know, if he wasn't cursing me out, he was trying to, you know, smoke and sell weed to the other residents. And if he wasn't doing that, he was putting his hands on other residents. So it wasn't like it was just his behavior was all good. It was just like it was very tumultuous. It was a lot to deal with. It was very, you know, like I couldn't even get my work done. And so then I started having meetings at work because they were like, what's going on with your work ethic? Your work's not being turned in on time. Your reports are not as good as they used to be. You know, what happened? And I'm telling them, like, I've been asking you guys for help. I've been asking you guys to help me with this kid. I have asked you guys to move me at this point. I even asked for them to just, okay, move me to another facility or move him to another facility. They were like, no, we are not moving him, X, Y, and Z. He's already been to all the other facilities, X, Y, and Z. And I'm just like, well, just move him temporarily until we can get him out of here. They didn't want to move him. So I'm, you know, going back and forth with the, you know, program directors, and it was just like no help. It was no help from them. Like, I have text messages to prove where I'm like constantly texting them about this kid on my personal phone because it had gotten that hard to go to work. Okay. So in between all of that time, this kid was also calling licensing and telling them that I wasn't giving him his supplies. He also was calling licensing saying that we weren't feeding them. He would call, because, you know, you could call community care licensing when you work with a child care or any type of group home facility. You could call community care licensing and anybody can make a report. You can make an anonymous report over the phone, and they will come out and they will check the facility. So he was calling them, and every time they would come to the house to speak to him, he would cuss them out like, I don't want to fucking talk to y'all. I don't want to fucking talk to y'all. And that's because he knew that it wasn't true. So he just wouldn't talk to them. He would just be like, I'm just going to ignore them and then it's going to go away. But he would do it just to make my life harder as a supervisor, because there was paperwork that was involved every time licensing came out. You know, I would have to find documents that they would want to see. I would have to show them around the house, around the facility and stuff like that. So it was all this stuff. So he knew it was like a direct stab at me because they're going to always look at the supervisor first. So licensing had came out probably the whole time that he was there, from after he came back from the hospital, from January all the way up until he left, which was around, I think, May, if I'm not mistaken. They had came out like 4 times. 4 times. The last time that they came out around June or July, I think it was June, and I was getting ready to go on a trip, and I had taken the day off because I was going on a trip. I was getting ready to go to Jamaica. and they called and said that they needed to you know, speak with the supervisor, X, Y, and Z. So I said, okay. So I go on my trip, I come back, and I get a call from the licensing coordinator, and she calls me over the phone, and she was like, it's for a sexual abuse allegation. And I'm like, seriously? Okay. Wow. So we going this far. So they're asking me a bunch of questions like, have you ever did this? Have you ever did that? You know, have you ever, you know, been alone with this kid? I'm like, of course, you know, there's times where we have to be alone with this kid, because if I'm the only staff working, that's what happens. So my supervisor is telling me, like, you know, if anything happened, you know, you could be registered as a 290 registrant. And I'm like, dude, you're talking to me like I did it. Like, I would never, you know what I'm saying? This is a kid that I knew he kept food on the side of his bed. You know, this is a kid who did not wash his clothes on a weekly basis. He had a wash day and never washed his clothes. I would have to make him wash his clothes. Like, why would I even mess with any of these kids in here? You know what I'm saying? And I'm a grown ass woman, and not to toot my own horn, but I look good, you know? So why would I want these little ass boys that I look at like they are my children, because I take care of them, you know, and I look out for them? So hearing that, I think that was like, man, it just blew my mind, you know. And that was like, it was already having panic attacks, but then that's like sent me over the edge. So, you know, when I came back from the trip, it was just the whole month of June of 2019. This is now 2019, because remember, we went from the end of 2018 to 2019. And this became extremely hard to go to work. And because I had gotten in this field to help people, I had gotten in this field to protect people from people like that, you know. I think it's absolutely disgusting, anybody who's ever been a child molester or a rapist, especially when it deals with kids. Like, I think it's absolutely disgusting. So to be accused of that was hard, because it was like, I know that this is, you know, and at this point I'm like, I know it's this kid, you know. And the program director seemed to have forgotten that this was the same person that, you know, this kid who had made this allegation is the same person who was like texting my phone, telling me he was going to ruin my reputation, telling me I would never work again, things like that. And so here I am thinking like, so you're not going to show them any of this? So for me, it just sent me into like a dark place. Like, I just started going downhill from that point on. And I ended up going out on medical leave. In the process of getting ready to go out on medical leave, I had texted the HR director at the time of the agency and told her that, you know, my therapist and psychiatrist is telling me I need to file for workers' comp. I do need the workers' comp paperwork to file for my case. So she writes me back in text messages, says, okay. Because at this point I had sought psychiatric help, because it was just, I was struggling every day. It was like I was crying every day in between work. You know, I would be at work bawling my eyes out, because it was like, this was a kid that I had been trying to help for 2 years. And before this situation that had happened in December, I was just genuinely trying to help this kid get home and get to his family. That was it. That was all I was trying to do. I even had a good working relationship with his grandmother. You know, his grandmother at one point had even asked me, like, can you take him into your home? Like, could you be a foster mom for him? Because he listens to you. He does this, he does that, you know. And it's like, this is someone's grandmother asking me this. You know, she's asking me to take him in because she's like, I can't take him in. She's like, I can't do it, you know. And so once I sought psychiatric help, you know, the psychiatrist was like, I think you need to go into a therapy program. And he was like, but it's, you know, about 3 weeks. And he was like, if that's not enough time, it will be extended if we don't feel like you've made the progress that you should have made. So I said, okay. So I ended up going into this therapy program where I was doing what they call intensive therapy. So it was intensive one-on-one and group therapy. So I was doing that. So I would go to therapy for 3 days out of the week for 5 hours. It would be like 4 hours group therapy and an hour one-on-one session. Okay. And mine was extended. So mine was extended to 5 weeks. And then once I finally had to file the workers' comp on my own, I had to call the old HR director who used to work at the company but no longer worked there and ask her, how do I go about doing this? And I explained to her all what was happening, so she knew, and so she helped guide me, even though she didn't work there anymore. But she was like, this is who you need to call, this is what you need to do, because at this point the job started treating me really bad. So you know, when I would communicate with them, they would say things. I had the text messages to even show that. Like when I finally did do the workers' comp, and the workers' comp had me start therapy with another therapist and another psychiatrist, when I sent in my paperwork to them, I sent it via text message. And in that text message, they were like, this isn't legit, this isn't from her doctor, because they were so used to texting each other that they forgot I was on a text message thread. And I was just like, here was I put in like 2 years worth of work. You know, you work hard for these agencies and you put your best foot forward to always produce good work. And for them to come back and say that this isn't legit, as if I would lie to be off of work. When you got to understand, when I took that leave from work from July, and at this point we're all the way like in September now. We're almost around my birthday. We are I hadn't had no money coming in. None. So I was literally at home, depressed, no money coming in, depleting my savings to keep my bills up, right? Because I could not apply for state disability until the social worker, the psychiatrist filled out the paperwork and mailed it in, okay? So I had to wait. And it's a 45-day process from the date that they receive your paperwork, okay? So here I am sitting here and I'm like, you think I would want to be off of work and not getting any money? And I'm like, all right, cool, whatever. So then I find out that because of the sexual allegation, DCFS has now sent it to community care licensing. So community care licensing is now a part of this whole investigation as to, like, if I touched this kid, if there was any type of relationship between me and this kid. So now I'm at home and this you know, worker is like, I need to see you, X, Y, and Z, this, that, and the third. And so I go and meet with this guy. Now in the month of October, I ended up accepting a new job. I had gotten a job offer because I had already said that I was going to start moving on from this other job, just because, you know, it just wasn't looking right. I felt like this agency was going to lose their contract, which they ended up doing. So in October, we had gotten a notification from them. We got a notification from them that they were going to be shutting down. Now, prior to them telling me in mail that they were going to get shut down, I had went back to work for 1 day, and I had a psychiatrist appointment the next day, but I still also had vacation time. So in the process of all of that, I text my program director and I tell him I will not be at work the next day, and I told him that I already found a staff that will be willing to come into work for me, and the program director like blew up on me. When I get back, we have to have a talk because you're doing things and you shouldn't be doing that. Now mind you, the whole time I have been working there for 2 years, he would always tell us, find whoever's gonna cover your shift and make it work. Okay, so now all of a sudden, because I've been gone and I'm doing a workers' comp situation, it's like, oh, you shouldn't be doing that, you shouldn't be doing this. And I was just like, well, I'm not gonna be here because I have a psychiatrist appointment. Now anytime that you have a doctor's appointment or a psychiatrist appointment or anything with a therapist, you do not have to tell your job what it's exactly for. If you need a note, those doctors will give you a note, and I don't have to produce the note unless I miss 3 days of work by California state law. So he was like, well, you need a doctor's note. And I was like, no, I don't need a doctor's note, because if I'm gonna not be here tomorrow and I'm telling you well before 8 hours of my next shift, I don't need a doctor's note. I don't need a doctor's note until after 3 days. So he was like, but you were supposed to return to work today. Mind you, I'm sitting at my desk. I said, I am at work. I just explained to you I was at work. So this whole thing is going through text messages because he doesn't want to call. He doesn't want to pick up the phone. And I'm just like, wow, okay. So when I go see the psychiatrist ends up taking me back off work. That's when they send me the text message like, this isn't legit, this isn't real, this isn't that. So anywho, come the month of October, I accepted a new position working for the county and the city. That's where I work at now. So I was still dealing with the situation. So sometime in December of 2019, the kid goes as far as to making a police report. So he makes a police report. I'm unbeknownst to this. I have no idea. I'm just moving on with my life or whatever, or at least trying to, because I'm still in therapy. I go to therapy once a week. And so randomly, I get a phone call. Now we in 2020. So now catch up. This is a couple months ago. Towards the end of February. So I get a phone call from the city attorney. The city attorney is like, are you aware that you're supposed to be meeting me in my office on Friday? And I said, what? I said, for what? And he was like, for, I forgot what he called it, y'all. I'm so sorry. I've been like wanting to tell the story, and then all of a sudden I'm doing it, and it's like I'm talking about it and I forget. But you know, he was like, well, basically there was an allegation of sexual abuse towards a kid, and he tells me the kid's name, and I was like, what? So he was like, well, I need you to come down to my office to meet with me. And so I said, okay. And I was like, well, do I need to get a lawyer? Do I need to, you know? Now mind you, the whole time that this is going on, the whole time, from 2018 all the way up until literally 2020, I had not told anybody anything. Only a couple of my close friends knew. I hadn't even told my mom, because it was one of those things where when you work in that field, you expect for kids to make allegations and it just to kind of blow over, because it's never really true, you know. Especially when you're dealing with kids who are on drugs, you're dealing with kids with psychiatric issues, you kind of expect for it to just blow over. But it just felt like it was just never blowing over. And so he's like, just come and meet with me. So, you know, I had to call my mom, and I'm like, Mom, I need to get a lawyer. You know, and I had to explain to her, hey, this is why I had to go to therapy. And, you know, it just being that vulnerable when you're thinking that, you know, after a while this is gonna blow over, and it just felt like it just kept getting worse. It just felt like it kept getting worse. You know, it just felt like it kept getting worse. So my mom, my dad, you know, they went with me to the city attorney, and I met with him. Very nice man. And you know, he's explaining to me like, well, we don't have enough evidence to charge you at all, but you know, he lets me tell my side of the story, and he's like, okay, so now all of this makes sense. And You know, because the whole time I was just stressing out, like, this kid really could ruin my life. You know, and everything is at stake, you know, and not knowing, you know, are they going to believe me? Are they not going to believe me? Because many times you see this happening, you know, a lot of people always tend to take the child's word over the adult. And I'm like, I am the I am the sane person here in this situation. And not only am I the sane person in this situation, I am the person who's not on drugs. You know, I am not on medication at this time. You know, I'm on medication now because how all of this took effect and toll on my body, that I do have to take medication for anxiety because my anxiety went through the roof. You know, being accused of something like that is so grotesque, you know, and it can take a toll on your mind and your mental health, you know, and for me it did, because part of it was because I was keeping a lot of it to myself, dealing with it alone, thinking, you know, after a while it would blow over, this kid would just leave it alone, you know, even though he knows that's not what happened. But using it against me, you know. Now mind you, this kid is like 16, 17. So, in the midst of all of that, you know, I was trying to get certain paperwork from the job, and the program director had texted me on the side and started telling me that, you know, I was miserable because I had told him that I had went back to, you know, pick up my stuff. You know, I still had stuff in my office. I wanted to pick up all of my stuff, take everything that belonged to me, and told me I was miserable. And I'm just like, I'm miserable? Okay. I never wrote him back, but I mean, I have the text messages, you know, and just not having that support from the job, and, you know, having to explain that to the city attorney, like, this is all what happened this all took place over time, you know, and it was all because of this kid. And so I had to tell them, like, no one decided to tell you that this kid has psychiatric issues. No one decided to tell you that this kid has been on a psychiatric hold, you know, and he was in the hospital for 5 days. No one decided to tell you that. But, you know, everyone's ready to take his word that, you know, I am just this, you know, horrible person. So he said, well, this will be thrown out. He was like, so you can stop stressing out. He was like, you could just stop. Because he was like, I can see it in your face, you know. And he was just like, you're not an ugly girl. So he was like, I know that this is, you know, this is not true. So he was just like, you need to take care of yourself and watch over yourself, you know. And it was probably the hardest 2 years of my life. Prior to this, I can honestly tell you, I really never experienced depression on a level that would keep you in a dark place. I mean, I think everybody goes through depression at a point in their life. Everybody does. But to feel like maybe I'm better off dead than alive, because if this is blown up and this ruins my life, then what? Then how do I deal with that, you know? And I'm very grateful that I did have some really good friends that were I had really good friends that were, you know, there for me and praying for me, you know, that reached out to me and told me everything was going to be okay. You know, for my mom and dad to just, you know, they stopped literally their whole lives to, you know, walk with me, and my dad was like, even if they had arrested you, you were not gonna stay. I was gonna bail you out. I don't care how much it cost, you know. You know, for just even making alternative plans, like, you were gonna come out on top of this regardless, you know. But it was very hard because it was like I was in a battle between an agency, a battle with this kid. I was in a battle with myself, and it took so much out of me. It took so much out of me. And in between that, I was still trying to maintain my social media presence. Some of you guys know that there was like a month that I had disappeared for like a month and a half, and that was when I was in the intensive therapy program. I had completely disappeared, and that was the reason why. You know, I couldn't find myself to get on camera. I couldn't find myself to paint anymore. I think I had stopped painting. A lot of you guys know that I am an art instructor too, so I had stopped teaching classes. I have not taught a class in almost a year. I tried to, and I just felt like I couldn't do it. It was so much pressure on me trying to do that class, and I was just like, I'm so sorry, you know, like, I'm here but I'm not here. And you know, I'm in therapy still, and I'm still dealing with it. And so there are times where I will disappear because I need to, you know, and I don't want to, because I remember when I started my YouTube, you guys, I was making videos weekly. I was doing like 2 skits a week, and then when all this hit, it was so hard. And what kept me doing the YouTube was my psychiatrist and therapist was like, you need to find something and hold on to it, because that's what's gonna pull you out of this. So I tell people that, you know, YouTube came and it kind of saved my life, because I was at a very low point. I was at a very low point. And you guys, you know, all the fluff buddies out there, you guys kept me afloat. Because if not, then I would have remained so deep in that hole that I probably might not even be sitting here right now. To say that suicide was never a thought, that would be a lie. You know, and even though I know I didn't do anything, but you know, it's like, once the world is against you, you know, because at this point I had an agency that was against me. I had this kid who was using the judicial system against me. You know, it's a different kind of weight, and it's a different kind of a burden on you. So it was hard. It was hard. So, where am I now? Where am I now? Now that we are removed from that situation and nothing is going to come of it, I have no malice towards that kid. If you were to ask me, I don't hate him because I was never brought up to, you know, hate people like that. So for me, it's not about a level of hate. I do feel sorry for him, because manipulation can only get you so far, and it can also get you in trouble. But I do not hate him. And you know, I hope that he finds some type of forgiveness in his own heart, and I do hope that he, you know, whatever deity that he believes in, hopefully it is God, or Allah, or whatever he believes in. I hope that he runs towards that with open arms and accepts, you know, whoever he praises. But I want to say that he's probably Christian, so I hope that he accepts God into his life, because hating him for what he has done would be harder on me and it would not allow me to grow as a person, especially to grow from that situation. So hating him would not solve anything. Hating him would not make the anxiety go away. Hating him would not, you know, stop the panic attacks, you know, and it just wouldn't. So I'm at the point where now, you know, I'm in therapy still, you know, learning to deal with that situation. I'm learning about me and myself, and you know, and I do apologize to a lot of my close friends if you guys felt like she doesn't call, or she doesn't check on me anymore, or she's acting different. And it's not that I'm not, you know, it's not that I'm acting different. I am a different person, you know, and the situation has made me more reserved. The situation has made me a lot more quiet, where I used to be like loud and obnoxious and, you know, wild and everything. And, you know, so I apologize to those friends that felt like I've neglected them, and it had nothing to do with you. I promise you, it had everything to do with me. And so when people ask me like, oh, where you been, or, you know, what's going on, what's, you know, what's in your head, I need you guys to understand that, you know, it was me. It was me. I was in my own head. I was dealing with my depression. I was fighting my demons. I was, you know, I mean, I know me and my one friend, we make jokes, and I was boxing with my demons. You know, and I was trying to forgive myself for whatever wrongdoings I had done, but I really and truly felt that, you know, I had never really felt depression on this level. I can honestly say that I had lived my life all the way up until I was, you know, 30 with no real depression, you know, or no everlasting depression that had lasted this long, or, you know, brought me to my lowest point. I had never felt like I was this rock bottom. Now, I've been broke before, you know, I've been broke. And, you know, I always felt like, dang, you know, I'm gonna make ends meet, but, you know, I've always found a way, you know. But this was a situation where it was like there was no light at the end of the tunnel for a very long time. Somewhere in between there, you know, being on YouTube, that helped me. And there was a lot of times that, you know, you guys as fluff bunnies, that I was able to make it this far. And I appreciate all of my fans, my supporters, my friends who have been with me on this journey. Because when I would go live, that was the time that I would forget about it, because you guys would have never known on any of the lives that I've ever done, you guys would have never known that I was going through this. And I just truly appreciate you guys for continuously being yourself and continuous, you know, being that uplift that I needed, being that extra push some days. Because if I wouldn't have been going live for you guys, then man, there would have been some long days, man. There were some long nights. So I truly appreciate you guys for being there. And I know that God works in mysterious ways, and I know that He wouldn't put anything on me that He feels like I would not be able to deal with. And, you know, I came over this situation, being accused of sexual allegations against a minor, only for them to throw it out because there was not enough evidence to support that claim at all. You know, and then having to have people write statements for me to prove, like, yeah, no, this ain't her. And you know, I overcame it. You know, it was definitely a hard time in my life. You know, definitely a hard time. And it's very hard talking about it. But I did feel like I owed a piece of me to you guys. Because there are days where, yes, I'm still in my head. And I'm still battling those demons. And there are days that I have to have that day for myself. For my sanity. And now that is the reason why I tell you guys, when it comes to working for an agency, I'm not going to say don't put your best foot forward, but I will say don't put all your eggs in your basket. Because this is an agency where I thought I was good with these people. You know, I thought I was fine. And, you know, when they saw the work ethic changed and they didn't want to believe that this kid was a problem or harassing me, and that, you know, told me on many occasions, don't take it personal, they didn't have my back. They did not have my back. You know, and that hurt me the most. Because it was like, I had to do so much for y'all. You know, and it was hard. But I overcame that too. So I'm still dealing with that situation. And it has changed my life. This has changed my life drastically. You know, how I move and how I operate, you know, with people, it has changed my life. I wouldn't say trust is an issue, because I have trusted, you know, new people to come into my life and to be friends with me and stuff like that. But how I observe and, you know, try to keep myself out of situations that could be deemed as awkward later on. I am trying to protect myself more, you know. So I encourage all of you to protect yourself, and protect yourself by any means necessary, because you owe it to you to take care of you. Because what I do realize is that nobody is going to take care of you like you can take care of yourself. It's been a long journey. And it hasn't stopped here. But I felt the need to give you guys a piece of me, because you guys have to understand where I'm coming from. And I felt like it was only fair to make this slight documentary of how things have happened for me within the last 2 years. That included my social media presence, that included my life, and yes, so many of my lit lives, y'all, I was going through some real heavy stuff and trying to be fully present. So I've been saying I was going to do this, you know, for a long time. I have been saying, like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to, you know, X, Y, and Z, I'm going to do this documentary and get it over with. And it took me some time, and I'm here now. Yay! I'm pretty sure Shin is crying, Tanir is crying. Ronan probably like, dang, cousin, I didn't even know that all happened like that. And Hustle like, yeah, sis, talk your shit. Like, I can hear Hustle, talk your shit, you know. My mom's probably like, you need to turn this into a book. You know, just seeing the different people's reactions towards this video. And I know Oak is probably like, I'm so proud of you, you know. And I can hear Yinty, you got this, sis. Like, I can just hear you guys' voices in my head, which is kind of crazy. Don't tell my therapist that. I'll be honest, like, yeah, Jaquel, talking about, you hear different voices? Like, no, these are actual friends. Like, you know, I could just, you know, but there were some people that, you know, in between that they were there for me, and I appreciate them. And even though we're no longer friends, they were still there for me. So I appreciate them as well. And you know, maybe things will work out for us, maybe things won't, I don't know. But you know, I appreciate them being there for me in the beginning half, because those were the people that prayed for me. But if you've ever said a prayer for me, if you've ever hit me up and just, and said something nice to me, I appreciate it more than you guys understand. I truly love you guys, and thank you for giving me this opportunity for me to be myself, for allowing me to love myself and be this vulnerable with all of you, and for you to see me, because it has helped more than you know. It has been a big weight that feels like it's lifted off my shoulders. So I appreciate all of you. I love you all, and I truly thank you for this opportunity. Side note, y'all got me out here crying, wiping my nose. I ain't got no tissue. Okay, can somebody tell me when do I become famous, so that way I could have like a makeup artist fixing my makeup in between, because now I look toe up. My nose is running, I feel all congested and stuff.